Hi, I'm Stephen Jordan. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what you should expect will happen in terms of your economics after a disaster happens and what the effect of a disaster is on your small business base. So as you can imagine, before a disaster hits, we've got, what we'd call blue skies or normal operating conditions. And hopefully your business base is growing before then. Though, of course, within the normal operating standpoint, there are always neighborhoods that are going up and neighborhoods that are going down. There's always a little bit of churn, right? So you have to separate out what is normal churn versus what can happen when a disaster does hit. There have been multiple studies that suggest that when you have a major disaster like the Eaton fire or the Palisades fire in California, Hurricane Helene, or one of those kinds of massive events, you can get up to 40% of your small business community closing, either permanently or temporarily, in kind of that immediate time frame. This is why a number of communities have started to really think through how to institutionalize small business relief grants and small business emergency funds, things like that. And the reason why you want to think about them as grants is because usually when you've got this kind of closures, the neighborhoods themselves are also pretty much closed or evacuated and the people have taken off. What happens here is that you're really just basically trying to help the small businesses make payroll, help them to make sure that their people are coming back and that they're able to actually really pick up the pieces from what has happened. So, and the reason this is critical is because most small businesses have only about 30 days, about basically a month and a half of funds, of cash flow on hand usually. Now, the after that kind of initial phase when everyone is flat, a very interesting phenomenon happens. People say that it's actually relatively easy for small businesses to reopen. There's People tap their insurance. People generally have like a rainy day fund or money under the mattress somehow, or friends and family come in to pitch in, or there are other programs national in scope like the Small Business Administration's EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, that allows some cash to come in. And the second thing that happens is that you get this influx of people coming into a community who are there for the response. And one of the interesting things that happens after disasters is often your hotels will tell you that they have 100% occupancy. You have a lot of people coming in to help out. You've got nonprofit organizations, you've got federal workers, you've got people from different specialties that are coming in. And you also have a situation where a lot of people in the neighborhood, in the affected area, are going to be buying kind of replacing the dishwasher, replacing the car, replacing something on the roof. One-time capital expenses that they have to do, big ticket expenses. And so it can look actually like your economy is booming 6 months to 9 months after a disaster. In fact, this is a phenomenon that happens pretty often, where you'll find that a year after the event, people in the affected area will tell you that they actually grew 3 or 4%. But the challenge that you have with that is that these are a lot of times specialty items that are being bought or sold and one-offs, and the underlying economy may not be growing at all. You can have a situation where on the one hand you'll see some districts that are really going like gangbusters and other places that kind of look like ghost towns. And there's several phenomenon that also contribute to this. You'll see sometimes entire malls where almost every shop in that strip mall and that street mall will be closed because each of them has a different lender. Each one gets denied by a different set of people, and there's no kind of way for your individual lending relationship, you know, to have visibility about the overall impact on the entire community. So while this thing is going on, the underlying companies that are normal, that are there during all times, like your dry cleaners, your wedding photographers, your specialty stores, your boutiques, all of those guys may still be suffering incredibly. And this is a real challenge, because if you don't bring this back, you really don't bring back the community, because the small businesses are the ones that are most likely to serve the local community and to hire the local community. And of course, what also happens is that you get this downward curve once all of these one-time big ticket purchases have been made, and the federal funding or state funding or emergency funding starts to dry out. And then you will sometimes see what we call a second shakeout. And it depends on the severity of the disaster, of course. Could be 9 months, could be a year and a half before this happens. But you'll see this thing where the underlying economy really hasn't recovered. Your disaster economy or relief economy is tapering off. And you have to think through like a second round potentially of grants or loans, what you'd call, if these are relief grants or relief loans, think about these as recovery grants or recovery loans. And ISD actually worked with Wells Fargo to create a private small business recovery grant program after the Thomas fires in 2017. And we helped about 64 small businesses about a year after the disaster. And the reason for that is that because the small businesses are so dependent on the local area coming back, that if they don't, and the customers decide to go, if the customers are displaced or there's tough access, for example, in the Thomas Fire case, the southbound 101 was cut off by mudslides at one point. You still need to be able to help tide some of these people over for maybe another month or 2 or 3, depending, until the rest of the community catches up. So when you're thinking about trying to retain your small business base, one of the things that you might want to consider is some kind of a credit for resilience or credit for recovery program during normal operating conditions. If you can figure out ways that you can incentivize your small business base to do basic things, like making sure that they get their inventory off the floor, that they've got adequate insurance, that they've got a good system for taking care of their employees, etc. That will help a lot to reduce this initial impact thing. And then the second thing that you want to do is you want to try and consider to have maybe a preset small business relief fund / recovery fund, so that there's one area, one place for small businesses to know that they can go to try and access some of this kind of support. And going along with that, if you do have multiple loan offerings happening, or multiple grants, or multiple small business programs, as much as possible, you want to try and get the providers to simplify and share kind of the application process. You know how in college you can apply once and you can fill out one form and you can apply to like 30 different colleges at the same time because they all have kind of the standard application? This is one of the things that you might want to consider working on now, so that in the event that a disaster does happen, it's relatively turnkey and pretty simple for small businesses to get into the system. To sum up, if you're very concerned about your small business resilience and future recovery, if you do have a major disaster, there are 3 ideas for you to consider. First, Try and set up some kind of a credit for resilience program where you incentivize small businesses to be proactive about their own risk management. Second, make it simple for small businesses to access help after a major event does happen. Consider having a common application, consider having a one-stop shop for resources, things like that. And third, consider pre-selecting or having in place the infrastructure for a small business disaster relief and recovery grant fund. I hope these help, and thank you very much.